News Now is brought to you by the Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. From the Pacific News Center in Hagåtña, Guam, here's Clint Ridgell and Janella Carrera with Betsy Brown and Roselle Romanes. PNC Sports with Blake Watson. And weather with Joanna O. With your news now.
Hafa, good evening, and thanks for tuning in to PNC's News Now. We are broadcasting live in Saipan and in Guam. I'm Clint Ridgell.
And I'm Janella Carrera. Thanks for tuning in. Your top story tonight, a female teacher from St. Thomas Aquinas was fired from the school for allegedly sending inappropriate images of herself to a student. The Archdiocese of Hagåtña released a statement today saying the student had filed a complaint with the high school and the administration then took disciplinary action. The school says the teacher was fired and the case was forwarded to the Guam Police Department. GPD spokesman AJ Balahaja says the case is under investigation. The teacher's name was not released to the public. According to the school officials, the incident occurred in January, but it's not clear when the teacher was actually fired.
Quadlin Garong will have no choice but to show up to court on March 18th for her summons now that she was properly served. Acting Court Administrator Jerry Cepeda tells PNC that the summons to appear and a copy of the indictment charging the 24-year-old in the hit-and-run deaths of 3 teenagers was served this morning. Garong is believed to be the person driving the 2005 Nissan Sentra that struck 19-year-old Cherika Galen, 16-year-old Sally Santos, and 16-year-old Julia George last November in the Zero Down area of Jigo. Garong was charged with 3 counts of manslaughter, 3 counts negligent homicide, and 3 counts each for reckless driving and reckless conduct.
Attorney General Elizabeth Barrett Anderson is hoping to bring a tracking system that helps victims of crime to Guam. The program is called VINE, and it stands for Victim Information Notification Every Day. Anderson explains that this system provides victims with the most up-to-date information about defendants. Victims would call into an 866 number, enter their password, and listen to whatever information is available about the case, such as hearing dates, the current status of the defendants, or conditions of release. All this information would be available to the victims 24 hours a day.
Right now, our advocates physically either have to go out to meet the victims or we try to call them. And you know how it is on Guam. Sometimes you get through in a phone call, you don't. If we have an online or electronic system, we try to email them. But the VINE is perfect because it's a system that gets the information on the criminal justice system.
Anderson says she plans to meet with court administrators to discuss this program.
Vice Speaker B.J. Cruz says demolishing the DOA Manuel F.L. Guerrero building would be a big mistake. He likened it to demolishing the Independence Hall in Philadelphia and replacing it with a monument to King George.
So much happened in that building that it seems sacrilegious to want to demolish it.
Vice Speaker B.J. Cruz is talking about the old DOA building, named after the second Chamorro governor of Guam, Governor Manuel F.L. Guerrero. Guerrero is one of the founding fathers of Guam's local government, and he's not the only founding father who governed from within this building's walls.
You cannot and should not destroy a building with that kind of historical significance of Governor Guerrero, Governor Flores, Governor Camacho, Governor Calvo, the first Governor Calvo, was in that building after he won the election in 78. He was in there for 4 years.
There are currently plans to demolish the building in order to make room for reconstruction of the old governor's palace built by the Spanish. However, Cruz believes both the palace and the Manuel Guerrero building can coexist. In fact, he says he helped former Governor Ricky Berdallo develop plans to rebuild the palace back when he was governor.
In all of our discussions about the restoration of the palace, there was never any discussion about demolishing any of the buildings that were there currently.
Cruz says that Guerrero actually started out as a servant in the governor's palace before he would go on to govern the island from the DOA building that now bears his name.
Why would we want to destroy something from which we were statesmen to build something where we were servants.
Cruz says he would like to see the reconstruction of the governor's palace, but not at the expense of the Manuel F.L. Guerrero building.
The voting rights of Guam and other U.S. territories was highlighted in an episode of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, a late-night talk show on HBO. Oliver points out the irony of celebrating Selma, or the historic march 50 years ago that led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act, as U.S. territories still don't have the right to vote for U.S. president.
There is nothing not to love about Guam. It is a beautiful island in a strategically important location for the US military. Guam gives a quarter of its land and as much as an eighth of its people to the US military. And yet, due in part to their lack of full voting rights, those veterans are shamefully underserved.
Oliver also gives a little history lesson on the racism involved in deciding who gets to vote and who doesn't.
Basically, the judgment of the Supreme Court was that the new territories were inhabited by, quote, alien races, and they may not be able to understand Anglo-Saxon laws. Therefore, the Constitution doesn't have to apply.
Wow. Alien races can't understand Anglo-Saxon principles. I find that condescending, and I'm British. I do so wish we could explain the concept of voting to them, but dearie me, their savage little coconut brains would probably just collapse.
While Oliver calls the justice who wrote that opinion a racist, he notes that Henry Billings Brown also meant for it to be temporary.
It's like for over a century, America's computer has been saying an update to your country is available, and we've been clicking remind me later again and again and again.
And to drive his point home, he even takes a clip from a PNC interview years ago.
And their registered voter turnout is actually higher than that of the rest of America. And to misquote the words of the great philosopher Lil Jon, turnout for what? That's a great song. But just imagine how it must feel to have the desire to vote, but know deep down you're going to be ignored. Actually, you don't have to imagine it, because let this Guam voter tell you.
It's terrible. I mean, I believe it's not fair, you know. We're all citizens of the United States.
You can watch the full episode online. We'll post a link to our website at pacificnewscenter.com.
And in reaction to John Oliver's piece on the U.S. territories, local attorney Levin Camacho, who's spearheading a campaign for equal voting rights, says Oliver's arguments are at the core of a lawsuit he's preparing to file soon. Camacho and civil rights attorney Neil Weir have started a petition that calls for equal rights for the U.S. territories. Camacho explains that this petition helps support their movement that he hopes would engage Congress to look into antiquated laws that prevent residents from the territories from being able to vote for president. Camacho says Oliver does a good job of pointing this out in his latest show.
We think that, okay, we live in a democracy in the pure sense of the word, but yet we have over 4 million people living in the territories who are denied the right to vote for president. I think the kind of bigger point that he was driving home is that, you know, we really need to examine why we just accept the way that we treat people living in the territories to be okay.
In fact, Camacho says the civil rights movement didn't happen overnight. It took several years before Congress moved on expanding civil rights, including voting rights, to its citizens.
The civil rights movement didn't happen in a year. You're talking about a decade of you know, grassroots movements to get something done. And I can imagine that it would take very similar efforts to have something change with the way that the territories are treated.
You can learn more about this petition by visiting representguam.org.
There was a massive crowd of students, faculty, and residents at the University of Guam earlier today as the college celebrated their 47th Charter Day. PNC's Rizal Romanes attended the opening ceremony this morning that kicked off the festivities. She has more in this report.
The University of Guam celebrated their Charter Day today with games, cultural performances, live music, and food.
We are experiencing unparalleled growth as an institution. It has been a decade of growth, a decade of reflection, a decade that not only reminds us of who we are and what we contribute, but our potential as a people and as an institution.
UOG's departments had booths set up around the campus while various activities took place throughout the day. One of those included the Chamorro language competition at the field house. We talked with a small group of students from Tinian Elementary School who flew in just for the event. We asked them how they prepared for the competition.
I like that we do different kinds of things that are really fun, including the singing and rehearsing and practicing our language. It's exciting because it's my first time here in Guam, and it's fun to learn Hafainaanu.
And what does that mean?
What's your name?
We just visited the field house for the Chamorro language competition. Now we're headed to the science building for some chemistry. A total of 7 high schools around the island competed for UOG's chemistry titration competition.
We were trying to encourage them to, get into chemistry or biology or other sciences because, we need a lot of that here in the region, especially here in Guam.
Jana, one of the participants from Academy, tells us what made her join.
I don't know, it's just so cool how everything is about chemistry. And I like how when you study something on a molecular level, you understand, oh, why does this happen, like with the weather and things like that.
Rosal Romanes, PNC News.
All right, well, I think Betsy Brown is next, and I saw her at GPO earlier. Something about Forever 21. What's that?
Forever
21. What is that? I don't know.
Betsy, can you tell us?
Betsy.
Forever 21 is opening on Saturday. I'll tell you more about that when News Now continues. But for now, I'm holding my spot in line.